Good evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Explore the Republic of Georgia. I felt the need to say the Republic of Georgia just to avoid any confusion as to what Georgia we were referring to. So we are speaking of the country in Asia over by Kazakhstan, part of the former Soviet Union. Hello. Hi, Douglas. Hello from Chicago. And I know we have people possibly joining us live, I think, in Seattle and maybe in Texas. We've got a wide array tonight. If you are joining us live, there is a very brief 1 moment, 1 question poll. So please fill that out. And then there is the question on the table. I know a lot of you are from other places, but there is the opening question on the table, which is, what business does Atwood need? Now that we've finally got ourselves a bookstore, it's very exciting. If you have not been to the new Room of One's Own, I highly recommend it. It's absolutely lovely. Molly and Michael are joining us from Washington, and they are OG table wine class people who moved to Seattle during the pandemic. And one of my saddest moments was that I didn't get to say goodbye to you guys. So hi, it's nice to see your names. So hello, and hello to everybody, regardless of whether I know you or not. So if you're watching live, please, I would be curious to hear what you all think Atwood needs. I don't know. I'm just curious. Nathan and Sarah say a small international food market would be nice in the neighborhood. That would be nice. I feel like the best international markets and really Asian markets is what I'm kind of thinking of. I definitely have to drive, and that's okay. I don't mind, but yeah, that would be super cool. All right, guys. Nobody else has no other suggestions? Okay. Fine, I guess we'll deal with it. So we have a lot of history to cover. As I mentioned in the opening chat, in case you didn't see it, if you could have 2 glasses, I should say, if you are drinking along with us with the wines that we have, it would be really helpful if you could have 2 glasses. And if you really want something in your glass to start, pour yourself a little bit of rosé right now, and then we'll talk about why we're going to have 2 glasses in a few moments. But first, we're going to dive in and chat about kind of the fundamental information of Georgia. And looking at the poll, so, you never know. Somebody could be from Georgia. It looks like no one has knowingly had Georgian wine before. I also had not had Georgian wine before 2021. And a new importer, I shouldn't say new, but they are new to Wisconsin, started bringing in Georgian wines and started working with one of the suppliers that I work very closely with. So I had a chance to do an online seminar with them and learn a ton about Georgian wine. So I'm very excited to kind of share this info with all of you tonight. So high level information about Georgia as a wine country. It ranks pretty far down the list in terms of how much wine it produces. So it's 22nd on the list. And the list is really interesting because the top 3 countries they produce so much more wine than everybody else. And then there's this like little chunk, the next few after them. And then everybody after that is like very, very small amounts. So Italy and France kind of go back and forth. In case you're wondering what those top 3 are, Italy and France go back and forth. Currently it's Italy. And then Spain is 3rd. And so they are in the 3+ million gallons of wine. Gallons, I think, is the measurement. And then it's the US. So Georgia's pretty low down, but they do produce wine. There are 24 what they call PDOs. That's the same as the American AVA, as the French AOC, as the Italian DOC. So it's these sub-regions within a country that say like the grapes and the wine have to come from this specific place. So there are 24 of those in Georgia. More have been added in recent years. But when talking about Georgian wine, I have not come across really much information where the focus is on those specific PDOs. It's more about kind of like the broader, pardon me, I feel a sneeze coming on and it's going to happen at some point here, the larger regions. The one thing that I did not know, I didn't know much about Georgia at all. It's incredibly diverse in terms of its climate and terrain. So there are about 20 mountain ranges. Kind of depends on if you allow like the big mountain ranges to kind of be broken up and considered their own separate ones. But so about 20 different mountain ranges. There are 25 rivers, and there are more than 30 microclimates. So there are all sorts of different types of soil. There's desert land. There's cool cool and humid. There's cool and arid. There's all sorts of different climates here, which is unusual. There are countries like ours, like France, like Italy, where there are differences, right, from the north to the south, and that matters. But here, it's a pretty small country, and from west to east, it really matters in terms of what grows there, how hot it is, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty fascinating from a geographical standpoint. Here's where stuff gets really real and really interesting. Wild grapes started growing in Georgia most likely about 9,000 years ago. 7,000 BC. There is archaeological evidence of wine vessels that are 8,000 years old from Georgia. Like, it's just kind of mind-blowing if you really stop and think about it. And if you're a history person, you know, you can really get wrapped up in this. Georgia, because the grapes were growing there, and you know, they have been making wine there forever. This is the birthplace of wine. It was a major wine producer through the Middle Ages, through the Crusades. So it was a Catholic country during the Crusades, so they were left alone, whereas most of their neighboring countries were conquered during the Crusades, but Georgia was left alone, and so they were able to continue to produce wine. Then the Ottoman Empire didn't infiltrate Georgia, so even though Sharia law outlawed winemaking in most of their neighboring countries because of Islamic traditions, again, because they were Christian, they were left alone, and so they were allowed to even continue to make wine then. So they've just been making wine continuously all this time, which is just kind of mind-boggling. They've been conquered many, many, many times. So the fact that they were able to continue this winemaking tradition throughout all of that thousands of years is fascinating. So they made wine. I mean, like, I know that I'm going to like skip and say like, yep, so they made wine for 8,000 years, but that's the truth of it. And we're going to talk about how they make wine and how they are still to this day making pretty ancient styles of wine. So I don't need to belabor that point right now. In the 19th century, phylloxera, which is this tiny little havoc-inducing bug, came actually from the Americas. So phylloxera came over, and mildew came over. And was mildew a common issue? Was it a specific strain of mildew? Apparently, it was a specific type of mildew that really decimated the vines. So it was a new type of mildew that came from the Americas. So the grapes just didn't have a natural protection. And so I know, dang in America, I know it might not be like our America, like it's the Americas. So we could blame it on someone else. Isn't that the American way? But so either way, they really knocked out most of their vineyards in the 19th century. Then the Soviet Union takes control of Georgia in the 20th century and really determined a lot of what happened. So almost all of the wine that was produced in Georgia was consumed by the Soviets until Mikhail Gorbachev came into power in the 1980s. I did not know this. I am young enough that I was alive for Mikhail Gorbachev, but I didn't know much about him. Like I knew that his wife and Nancy Reagan had a beef. That's pretty much all I knew about them. He was apparently he was a bit of a teetotaler. He did not think that alcohol should exist in the Soviet Union. I find fascinating that Boris Yeltsin then came into power after him. But anyway, so the wine industry really, really struggled in Georgia because Soviet consumption was down and Georgia had no export business to speak of. So the big thing here that I didn't put on the slide is like this just gigantic question mark of like, so what now? They have this ancient style of making wine. They have winemaking traditions throughout the country. They know how to do it. It's very important to them. It's, culturally like who they are as a people. The question is can they get their wines out to all of us? Are their grapes too weird? Are they going to start growing things like Cab and Chardonnay to try to meet the global market? So all of these questions, and there isn't an answer. There really genuinely is not an answer right now. They're just kind of these question marks as to like the future of Georgian wine, which is another reason that I really got inspired to teach this class. Speaking of varietals, of the world's 4,000 varietals, Georgia is responsible for more than an eighth of them. They grow 525 different varietals of wine. Unlike our friends in Italy, where my Sangiovese and your Sangiovese have two different names because I'm convinced that mine's so much better than yours. Genuinely, as far as I can tell, there are 525 different varietals of wine grapes in Georgia. It's kind of wild. The two most widely planted ones, we're going to taste one of these and not the other one. So Rkatsiteli is the most widely planted white grape, and Saperavi is the most widely planted red grape. So we will be tasting Saperavi, but not Rkatsiteli. I am going to do my best to do right by the Georgian language. What I do know is that they pronounce pretty much every single letter. The TS in Rkatsiteli is like a tss sound, but that they do pronounce all of the different letters. They don't really have diphthongs and things of that sort, was what I was told. I could be wrong. It's not like I, speak Georgian in any way. Here is a lovely map. I'm happy to bring this back as we go, but just to kind of give you a sense of like where we're going to be. We're going to be in the far, we're going to kind of start in the two middle regions, Imereti and Kartli, and then we're going to end in Kakheti. Kakheti is in the far east, and it is by far the biggest wine region. So what they kind of likened it to is like California. It produces the majority of the wine in the country. So that's why there's so much focus on it. I purposely wanted to pick wines that were from 3 different places, just so that we kind of got a slightly broader understanding of Georgian wine. Before we start with wine, does anybody have any questions about that introductory information? Okay. All right. Here we are. These are Qvevri. This is how wine is made in Georgia. It doesn't have to be made this way. It could be made in a stainless steel tank. It could be aged in oak. But a lot of wine is made in Qvevri. Every one of our wines tonight is aged in some capacity in these types of vessels. So the picture on the top with the three of the Qvevri laying down is to give you a sense of their size. They are buried in the ground, often inside people's homes. The picture on the right is a slice of it so that you can kind of see what it looks like. So they stomp all the grapes, and then the seeds and stems and everything, juice and everything runs into the Qvevri that are underground, keeping the wine cold. And then, so that's what it looks like as the wine is fermenting. And then the picture with the kind of the moving stir stick is like how they stir the wine. It's so fascinating. They did this. The biggest difference between these and Italian amphorae or Greek amphorae is the Greek amphora have handles on them, which means they were meant for transport. That was their intention when amphora were created. It was to take things to market. These are not meant to travel. They got bigger and bigger because wine consumption grew and grew, and they were starting to run out of room, and they were starting to break because they were too heavy to be standing up on their own. So then they like had this beautiful like aha moment, and they buried them in the ground. Now they're kept cool by being in the ground, and so it actually helps even more with a like kind of low, slow fermentation. It's pretty cool. Kristen and Patty are asking if they're clay or cement. So they are clay. There are a few Qvevri makers in Georgia that are like masters of this trade, and it's kind of treated almost like it's a mystical thing that's passed down from generation to generation. So you can watch, there are really cool YouTube videos about Qvevri makers. It's really interesting. So they're these gigantic clay vessels. They're baked. They're rubbed with beeswax to keep liquids from the outside come in. They are porous. They want some oxygen to flow, but the beeswax is just there to make sure that no like groundwater or anything is getting in. So all of that is to say these wines that we're about to taste are just wild because they're just different. So actually, sorry, we're going to stay on this slide for a second. I want everybody to, if you are drinking along with us tonight and you haven't already tasted the rosé, I want you to taste the rosé for a second. We're actually going to not talk about it first. It is the more delicate of the three wines that we're going to taste, which is why I want you to taste it first. And if you are so inclined, I would love for you to like just have that in a glass over, taste it, think about it, maybe write down a word or two, and then we're going to come back to it. I really want to kind of like take this story arc where it's headed. I want to like take you on the whole historical trajectory here. And the rosé is a little further in the future than where we kind of need to start, but it is the more delicate wine. So I just kind of want you to taste it and think about it for a second. And we'll have time. We'll come back to it. Okay. So now in your other glass, pour yourself some of the white, or the amber, I should say. It's not white. So I didn't really know what to call this. It's like, they call it amber. I'm calling it OG skin contact. When we talk about skin contact wines, when we talk about orange wines, it doesn't get more old school than this style. So in those Qvevri, they have, they use them for reds and whites, quote unquote whites, white wines that go into those Qvevri, and they hang out with the skins and the seeds and stems for an extended period of time, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. And then the resulting wines are these gorgeous things. So they, they'll call them white, and anywhere else in the world would happily be saying like, oh no, they're skin contact. Oh no, they're orange. Let me get in on that trend. So that's how the Qvevri wines are made. This is an example of a white grape. So the grape here is Garuli Matsavani. And this is their amber wine from Tebza. Tebza is going for a very like natural, wild kind of wine. So they don't really get in the way too much. So smell, taste, tell me what you think. This is like getting to taste original wine, like how wine would have been 9,000 years ago. I think as soon as you taste it, swallow it, you might understand why I didn't really want you to start here, why I wanted to at least give the rosé a shot of you being able to taste it. For those of you who are not tasting along, this wine has quite a bit of tannin to it. So it could be considered a little bit of a palate bomb, but it's really fun. And we have to start here because this is where it all started. All I have so far in the chat is it definitely doesn't look the greatest. Fair. Not sure how to describe it. Earthy. I think earthy is a completely fair and accurate way to describe it. I get Parmesan on the end. I can see that. That kind of like salty, nutty cheese thing. That makes sense to me. There's something almost like tomatoey to me. The aroma is fascinating. The aroma is so fascinating. When I was watching the YouTube videos of them making the Qvevri, I just felt like, I don't know what they smell like. I don't know what they smell like, but it feels very much to me like they smell like this. Like, I'm like, I don't know, but this feels like this just, it has such a unique savory smell. And, you know, I know that the power of suggestion is there, right? So I'm like, I have beeswax on the mind, but I do feel like there's a beeswaxiness to it. Like a nice garden. I like that as a description. Definitely some funkiness to it, right? Yeah, wild yeast smell for sure, right? It really, really does. Yeah. And now, like, I don't know, a few sips in, now it has a kind of like apple core, you know, like when you bite too close to the seeds in an apple, it kind of has that to me. Almost cider-like, right? In the wine. Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating wine, I think. Yeah, hazy apple cider. Yeah, like a yeasty cider. Yeah, yep. I don't know if such a thing exists as like sun gold tomato apple cider. But if it did, I think that it would be this. And I think it's pretty tasty and really interesting. From a food pairing perspective, you could absolutely 100% drink this on its own if it is your jam. I personally think something like this is really like, if you were gonna, I don't know if y'all are getting together with friends or not. Some of you are, I think. Some of you aren't. If you were to get together with your friends and like be like, I don't know, little history nerds or something, I don't know that you necessarily want to eat like ancient Georgian food. But I do think that this would be a really fun wine to serve to a party, or, you know, a dinner party or dinner with some close friends. Because it is unique, because it's something different, and it would kind of get the party talking about something. So some food suggestions that I have are pork. I think that the amount of tannin here could really hold up to something hearty, and so I wanted to like kind of play off of that apple. So pork tenderloin with apples, roasted duck. I'm not picking up on a lot of orange tonight. There have been other times I've tasted this wine and it's been kind of almost like somebody was like zesting an orange in front of me. So you could go with an orange thing if you wanted to, or stinky cheeses, wash drying cheeses, right? This amount of tannin is going to cut through it and clear your palate. And you could kind of like play off the earthiness with it, right? And kind of like echo those two things together, which I think would be really delicious. They obviously, with their fish on the label, they believe that this is a fish wine. I don't know. I don't know if it's a fish wine or not. Maybe one of you can tell me. You can find out. Molly and Michael are saying they like it. How do others feel? The words that are getting thrown out, I'm like, well, I don't know if those are good tasting notes or bad tasting notes, or indifferent, or just like, that's weird. No one's speaking up. Everybody's thinking. Everybody's wondering, right? Okay, you can keep thinking. Just so different, even from other natural wines we've tasted. Yeah. I agree with you, Kristen and Patty. I'm gonna take a little story jaunt here for a hot second. When I first started learning about beer, I was learning from a woman who had been a beer buyer for like decades. And I was like excited about Guinness, like I was excited about like pretty run of the mill malty beer. And the only beer that excited her was some Scandinavian beer that instead of using hops used pine needles as the bittering agent. And she was like, so like, oh my God, this is beer, this is so cool. And I was kind of like, I took it home and I was like, I don't get it. Like this beer doesn't taste like beer and whatever. So I can acknowledge that maybe this wine is just one of those like, yeah, that's just weird. Like, it's just weird, right? So for Jill and Kevin who don't love it, like that's totally fair. Or if you're kind of puzzling over it and you're kind of like, I don't know what's happening. I think that's okay. What I do think is really exciting me about it is the history, right? Is about the like getting to taste something that's so close to the original wine. I'm just pouring myself a little bit more because Molly and Michael said it smells like pollen. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's got such a great aroma. Personally, I think it smells fantastic. One thing that I was wondering as I was going through all my Qvevri research was, okay, so let's go back here for a second. So, okay, so they make this wine, right? Like it is up in the right-hand corner picture. They when it's being fermented, it's like the picture with the stick, right? So the grapes, the seeds and stuff are floating. And then when fermentation is complete, that all sinks and the wine rises. This is how ancient wine has been made, right? And I thought to myself, that's like super cool. That's great. How do they get the stuff out of the bottom of the Qvevri? Because I could find information about them pumping the liquid out, right? Like some sort of siphon, or I mean, even like real old school, like dipping a ladle down in there. And I was like, but like these are big. Like, how do you actually get this clean? Because these are used for hundreds of years, as long as nothing goes wrong. Small children, Molly and Michael say. Well, let me show you. It's not a small child. It's a grown-ass man. Yeah, they pump out as much as they can. They pump out as much of the solids as they possibly can, and then they send somebody down in there. And he, I don't know that it's always a he, that person cleans it all up. And then there's some, there are ancient ways and more modern ways of kind of cleaning it so that you can kind of put another batch in and it doesn't get the flavors and aromas of the wine before it. But I just love this picture. This is from the importer, because I texted them and I said like, hey, how do we get the wine out? Heather's asked me, do they become seasoned like a skillet? Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's the idea. And that like they will just continue to use them until they crack. I mean, until something happens to them, which I just find kind of amazing. So, all of the wines, as I said, all of the wines are made in this same way. So feel free to ask questions kind of as we go. But like, are there any questions about this first wine or this general style? I will say one thing that I've noticed. I don't know if you guys have had many wines. Pardon me for 1 second. I'm just gonna keep myself from having a dead computer battery. I've tasted a number of wines that are aged in amphora, and I love them. And I've noticed that they tend to have like a rounder mouthfeel. And so when I went into tasting my first Georgian wines, I was equating Qvevri and amphora a little too much, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I know what these are gonna taste like." And then it really is about this extended maceration time. So they're different than amphora aged wines. The clay vessel serves a purpose for sure, but it's not necessarily the same purpose that it's used in Italy or Greece. So for what that's worth. The question is this the only place to get this style of wine? There are some other countries that are using Qvevri, and apparently some Americans are starting to play around with them too, just because we can't leave well enough alone. The countries that use them are all in this general part of the world. Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. So not really wines that I think you'll find here in the US, but if you were to be traveling, perhaps you would. That's my understanding. And then there are wineries kind of in Eastern Europe, parts of Eastern Europe that may use it, but that's like really more of like a one-off kind of thing. Any other questions? Okay, then we're going to go back to the rosé now. So if our Tevza wine, and I should back up and say that the Tevza is from our westernmost spot. So if our Tevza is our most ancient way of learning about wine and like, drinking what the ancient peoples drank, the rosé is really the nod to the future. So it's a wine from two sisters own this winery together. Some of the wines are called Baya's wine. That's one of the sisters. And some of them are called Gavansa's wines. I don't know if that literally means like Baya makes these wines and Gavansa makes these wines or how exactly it works, but they are two young women, which is very unheard of in Georgia. There are lots and lots of women who are farming and growing the grapes. It is very unheard of, though, for them to be part of the winemaking tradition and own their own winery. So pretty cool that these two women are doing it. And they're both, I believe, in their 30s. They are savvy and they understand that the wine, like the first wine, might be a harder sell. It might be totally exactly what somebody wants, but it could also be like, not what somebody wants. So they do a little bit of wines more in the style of our first wine, but then for their rosé, they really are looking towards us. They're looking at us. They're looking at the world and saying like, well, what is it that people are drinking and what do they want? So this wine is also aged in Qvevri, but it's not quite as tannic. If you did taste it originally, you already know that. I'm really curious to hear, do you notice a difference between pre and post amber wine? What do you think of this wine? What do you think? One of the things I like about these wines, tasting all of these Georgian wines, is that they're all grapes I've never heard of before. They're all new to me. So I don't have a preconceived notion of what a lot of story tastes like. And, what a rosé of that grape should taste like versus going into a tasting of like, okay, this is a rosé of Pinot Noir and I've had, 50 of those. And so here's another one. Let me go taste it. Yeah. But it means we have to work more, right? We have to think about it a little bit more. Should I start talking about what I think of this wine? Because you're all being very quiet. Very different, far more familiar tasting. Bright cherry, yeah, for sure. Different from the amber, yeah. So different from the amber, right? Totally different wine. I agree, bright cherry. I get more candied red fruits when drinking it pre-amber. Now you get less of that. Yeah, and that is why I wanted you to taste it first. I didn't, I was aware of the amber and how it may or may not kind of deaden your palate a little bit. This does feel a little bit more familiar, although I will say today, and this is the third time I think I've had this wine, today I'm picking up on an aroma that I can't quite place. Almost like cotton candy. Not that this wine is sweet at all, right? But there's this smell that's sticking with me that I just can't quite place. Thank you for validating my cotton candy thing. I don't really know where that came from. I do think that this wine is easier to pair with foods because, at the end of the day, it's rosé. It has nice red fruit notes to it. So it's going to be beautiful with sushi. It's going to be beautiful with grilled salmon, really of any kind. Roast chicken. If you wanted to have pork tenderloin again, or you don't have it with the first one, you could definitely have it here. But I think that this would work really nicely with a lot of different things. I also have a watermelon rind thing happening for myself tonight. But I can stop telling you what I'm smelling. I want to know what you're smelling. I want to know what you're tasting or what you think of it. For those of you who don't know, we launched a podcast yesterday. So you should check it out. First of all, check out the Table Wine Podcast. It's me and my former employee, Andy, who I think many of you might know. But we record on Thursdays. So I recorded earlier today. So I'm kind of in the mode of me having to talk about the wine, me having to provide all the info. And now I'm no, you do. You have to tell me what you think. Oh, look at you guys. You guys are so nice. I know. I love Andy too. And he doesn't work for me anymore because he's getting his PhD now. And so I dreamt up an excuse for us to get to hang out a few times. Nathan and Sarah are asking, is the podcast going to be on Stitcher by any chance? Yes, I believe it is. I don't think that it's up there yet. Apple Podcasts kind of once it gets up on Apple, then it goes and disseminates to all of the other places. So it is on Spotify and it is on Apple Podcasts currently. And then I believe it will be available elsewhere soon. Thanks. Okay, back to rosé. What do you guys think? Do you think they have a future in rosé? Do you think that they should make rosé? Continue to make rosé? It's nice and I enjoy drinking it, but I'm not blown away. I think that's fair. I would definitely buy and drink this along with all my other summer rosés. Yeah, it would be nice on a warm summer day. Yeah, I think that's yes. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's red fruit, right? Some people were saying cherry. I get hooked on watermelon with this wine for some reason. There is some texture to it. Yeah. The amber was far more interesting and unexpected, for sure. Hands down, absolutely hands down, right? It's literally apples and oranges, or cherries and apples, or whatever, whatever we want to say that we're comparing, but they are super different wines. But I do think that what I like about Gvansa and her sister Baya, the wines that I've tasted from them are indigenous varietals made in Qvevri, and yet they're still kind of, there's more of a wider appeal, I think. With their wines, there's like a, okay, if you already like rosé, come along on this trip with me. Or like some of their whites, like, oh, do you like Sauvignon Blanc? You can come over here. You can come try this thing. And it's not going to be like so far afield that you know, buy one bottle and never buy it again. So, yeah, I think that it's super pleasant. And I think it would also be lovely in the cooler weather. I'm gonna go out on a limb there, and I'm gonna say that it does not just need to be a hot summer day wine. But I'm okay with you all disagreeing with me on that one. Any questions or anything before we leave? This is a Kotz wine for sure. What is Kotz? Curl up on the, no. What is Kotz? Am I missing something? Oh, Concerts on the Square. I was like, what are you talking about? They were at Bree Stevens this summer, so it feels like Concerts on the Field. COTF, I guess. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, outdoor picnics, things of that sort. I think that's great. That's what they're going for. They want it to be your summertime rosé. So remember it next year when the cold weather comes. God, when the warm weather comes. All right. Any questions about rosé before we leave it? Okay. As I mentioned, it is not common. They are really kind of rare in terms of what they're going for, which I think is cool and very. I feel like both of the first two wineries, and the last one does as well, but the first two wineries I think have very clear points of view, and that is also something that I really am attracted to in a winery. I don't always love that point of view, but I know that like you've got a thing that you're going for, right? All right. Time for red. So this is gonna be a little more general to the grape in terms of the knowledge that we're talking about. I feel like the other two were like very specific, like these specific wines. But here we can just talk about Saperavi to give you kind of a little bit of background. So it is planted primarily in the eastern region. So this is from Kakheti, which if you remember is kind of the bigger eastern region. It's planted there and just to the west of it. It is known for both black and red fruit notes. And then also a spiciness to it. And that spiciness is actual spice, notes, smells, and tastes, but also the fact that it's pretty high in acidity. And so it tingles your tongue the same way that like spicy food does. So it's kind of a little bit of both things. So Dila O is the name of this winery, and they are kind of the introductory level wines from a winery called Orgo. It was really hard for me not to pick the Orgo Rakatsatelli, which is white. My staff and I just tasted it at our staff meeting earlier this week, and it's just like a mind-blowing wine. It's so good. I'm going to bring it into the shop next week. It's just delicious. But I didn't want to have 2 of 3 wines from the same winery. Like I don't think that's particularly that interesting. I want to give you, a wider breadth than that. So, Dila O, this is their red. One of the things that I find really interesting about the whole the whole Qvevri business is that when they use them for red wines, they actually don't tend to ferment them in the Qvevri for all that long. So it tends to be a shorter maceration period for the reds. And then either the reds are complete or they are moved to oak to age. or move to stainless to finish aging. Whereas with the white grapes, they'll let them hang out for a longer time. So in this case, this is only in the Qvevri for a short period of time before they take it out, because they're going for a fresher style. So you can get versions of Saperavi that are like tannin bombs. This is not that. Kristen and Patty are saying that it smells wonderful. Juicy ripe raspberries for sure. Saperavi is one of the few red grapes where the juice is actually red, like the pigment of the meat of the grape is pink. And there are only a few of those grapes. And I just think that when you look at it, it's like such a saturated purple color. It's just beautiful. Yeah, it's super, super fruity, but not a fruit bomb on the palate, I don't think, personally. Heather's saying that smells like beets. Interesting. I can see that. That it smells pretty vegetal to you? Okay. I think that this wine would be so delicious with Thanksgiving. In my mind, that's just like such a fabulous pairing. And Heather, if it has that beet vegetal thing going on, I see no reason that wouldn't make it even more delicious with Thanksgiving. The winery itself really recommends spicy meat, pulled pork, things like that. So it can be really great with that. That is tasty. That is a delightful comment, Michael. I'm just going to say it again. I really miss you guys. I can picture your face as you're saying that. Definitely not a fruit bomb on the palate, more spicy notes and nice tannins. Smell and taste do not match. And I completely agree with that. I think that like if I smelled it, if I was doing a blind tasting, I would never pour Saperavi in a blind tasting because I know who's going to get that. But if I did, I feel like I would be very much in like Zinfandel land, right? Like I would just be like, oh yeah, it's fruity and whatever. And then I taste it and I'd be like, wait, what's happening here? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just that little bit of spice that I think is so lovely, and a little bit lighter. Like it's lighter on the palate than I think than you think it's going to be. And of the 3 wines that we tasted tonight, this is the least expensive. The majority of Georgian wines that are available right now are really relatively affordable. The one of the reasons we're not tasting Rakatsiteli tonight is that I did one for Wine Club not too long ago, and I just didn't think it was interesting to taste a wine that maybe many people who watch this class had already had recently. So, but if you haven't had that wine and you want to stop by the shop, it's on the shelf. And we have a different Saperavi from Guardians. So we have, some cool Georgian wines to check out. Other thoughts about this wine? Are people enjoying it? Four thumbs up. With 2 people, that's pretty good. I'll take it. Julian Cabin, yes, we really like this one. We'll be sharing with our neighbors tonight for sure. Oh, that's great to hear. That's wonderful. Yeah, I like this wine. I think it's a very autumnal red. I don't think that it's when I first tasted the wines, I'm trying to remember when I first tasted these wines. It's been a while. It was definitely earlier this year. And I was just kind of like trying to get the timing right on when to bring them in. And the other Saperavi that we have in the store is definitely like juicier, a little less tannic structure than this one, which made it like a nicer party picnic red for the summer, right? Like grill out kind of thing. But this I think is like I don't know, the kind of food you want to eat right now, that heartier type of food, right? So I think that'll do quite nicely. I'm an autumn guy and I like autumn wines. I love it. I'm discovering about myself that I don't really care much about astrology, but I am a Libra, and I really like Libra season, you know? Late summer or late September rolls around and I get all excited because I can, right? It's just how it is. Is anybody out there not enjoying this red wine? I feel like some of you are being quiet, and that could just be you being quiet, or it could be that you don't like this wine. I'm just curious. Really? Okay. I'm going to take the silence as pleasantly drinking, I suppose. Okay. I was going to go back to the map for just a second, just to kind of like show you where we were. So we ended in Kakheti over on the right, which is really where like the bulk of wine is coming from. And then I misspoke earlier. I said that the amber was the westernmost, but it's not. The amber is from Kartli there in the Aqua, I guess, which is just west of Kakheti. So between those two places, that's where the majority of the wine is coming from. And then Imereti, which is where the rosé comes from, is further west. And it's warmer there, and they grow different grapes than they grow, not just warmer, more humid. And so they grow different grapes there than they grow in the rest of the country, which I do find really interesting. Like, while we also have that, and, you know, while France has it too, right? Burgundy grows different grapes than Bordeaux and things of that sort. It's just such a small country. So the fact that in, you know, from here to, I don't know, the Minnesota border, that we would have such incredibly different climates, that we would be growing in totally different grapes and therefore making totally different styles of wine, is just kind of amazing. Like the Kartli vibe is similar to the amber that we had. It's kind of like this Wild West, you know, like real natty, you know, like let's be super natural winemaker kind of vibe there. And then, you know, Kakheti is like, no, we're going to be real and we're going to make wines that, you know, the whole world wants to drink. It's just kind of cool to see. So they love, not that I've been there, but they want visitors. When I was in the seminar, I said something about like, oh, I really, you know, like I really enjoy these wines, or I'm enjoying the history or whatever. I said something just, you know, like, yeah, this is really cool. And they're like, you should come. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, I've never been to England. Like, I don't know that I'm going to go to Georgia. Molly and Michael are asking if both natural and light with Kartli wines. I don't know if that's the vibe, that they're all, I don't know. I can't say for sure if that's the vibe. The label on the amber says, come visit us. I know, right? It says, come visit us, which I think is adorable. And that, oh, Patty's asking, how commonly would you see Georgian wines throughout Europe? Oh, it was a Natty Light joke. I see. Sorry. High school was a really long time ago for me. I don't really remember all the Natty Light I used to drink. Yeah. Okay, so Patty was asking how commonly we'd see Georgian wines throughout Europe. So not all that commonly. They are, so once the Soviet Union broke up and they started to try to get some sort of traction in terms of wine export, there is some, if you were in far Eastern Europe, you might be able to find some. But they really, my understanding at least, is that they really were going after the US market. We are the largest consumers of wine. So they know that like if they can sell wine in the US, then the whole economy would, lift, and then they can kind of focus on the rest of Europe. I also think that the rest of Europe, not that they're not interested in, tasting these wines the way that we would be, but they do have kind of these like very strong home territory wine traditions in a lot of European countries, right? So you just don't quite, I think it's harder to get your foot in the door. Whereas so much of the US doesn't produce our own wine that we're kind of like, yes, we love American wine, but also, hey man, we'll drink it. Yeah. If you go to Turkey next fall, you might see it. I would assume, yes, I would assume you would see it there. That feels right to me. Yeah, right. It's a pride thing. Yeah. Well, amazingly, we traveled 8,000 years in history. We tasted 3 incredibly different wines. I hope that you enjoyed them. And we're already at time, which kind of doesn't feel real, but here we are. Are there any lingering questions? Anything anybody's wondering about Georgia? Okay, well, if you think of anything, let me know. I'm happy to give you history and geography lessons and the new wines, right? They're just like so new. They're just like different. I'm glad. I'm glad that that was so interesting, everybody. That's really wonderful. Michael and Molly, is it your anniversary? Happy anniversary, you two. 5 years. Congrats, guys. Today? Is today the day? Oh my God, really? Okay. You too. Molly, we have the same name. And this is my anniversary with Connor. It's not our wedding anniversary, but yeah, we totally grossed out our daughter this morning because we were like 22 years ago, we had our first kiss. And our daughter was like, "Oh, gross, don't tell me anything about that. I don't want to hear about it." So October 14th. It's a good day. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad all of you are here. Thanks for joining us. We have Carignan class in a couple of weeks, and that is going to be on a Tuesday. I hope we can all handle it. It's going to be on a Tuesday because it's going to be. And then in November, we'll have Sherry class, which I think will be fascinating and really super fun. And then I'll have more fall, winter classes coming out soon to answer the question that I feel is like inevitable. Things are going to stay virtual at least through 2021. Perhaps in 2022, we will consider having in-person events again. I have an unvaccinated child at home, so I'm not going to have in-person events anytime soon, guys. So I love you all, and I hope that you all can understand that. Paul was saying that he enjoys the Dila. Nice medium tannins. Actually, thought the Guardian was more bold, and you might prefer that. Great. That's great. Heather, I'm glad you love virtual. I also love virtual. Maybe they'll never go away. Maybe they'll just always be an option. All right. It's lovely to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in class sometime soon.